thanks for tuning in online. We are so pleased with all the different people who have been tuning in from all over the country and all over the world to our ministry and what we're doing at All Souls here in Tulsa. If you have a chance to send me an email or connect with me in some way, let me know what you're finding, why you tune in, and what you're getting out of it. I would love to hear from you. I'm always pleased when I get messages from different people who tell me all kinds of things about the impact of All Souls Tulsa's ministry on them and their lives and their families. And if you get a chance to make a gift to support this ministry, to become a partner, we would love to partner with you and have you be a friend of the church and somebody who is actually supporting us to create this congregation and the world that we're trying to create together. You can be a part of it, and every gift of every amount makes a difference. We really appreciate your support.
Do you believe the world will be a better place in 100 years? I'll give you a second or two to decide. It's a tough question, so here it is again. Do you believe the world will be a better place in 100 years? Our hymn writer seemed to believe it would be. The time is now approaching when all shall dwell together, secure. You just sang these words, war shall be learned no more. The earth will be a blessed garden, and God, a God of peace. Of course, the hymn was written in the mid-19th century, before the Holocaust, before the dropping of 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, before the civil war between the Hutus and the Tutsis, before 9/11, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, before our awareness of climate change, before the torture panels, and before the murders by children of other children. Today marks 2 years since 20 elementary school children lost their lives in Newtown, Connecticut. One has to wonder, was the writer dreaming or delusional? And so I ask you again, do you believe the world will be a better place in 100 years? One way to start to figure it out, you may be doing this already, is to think back 100 years and then compare. 100 years ago, it was 1914, the start of the First World War, which was followed a short 20 years later by the Second World War. Charlie Chaplin made his film debut. The first assembly line for the Model T was established, and the automobile became part of American life. Women couldn't vote. Jim Crow laws were 20 years old, which made it extremely difficult for black people to vote. The state of Oklahoma had more people who described themselves as socialist than any other state in the country. Babe Ruth made his major league debut with the Red Sox. Britain rejected women's suffrage. Mother's Day was established in the United States. There were several firsts. I'll name a few. The first airplane flight from Los Angeles to San Francisco. The first transcontinental phone link from New York City to San Francisco. The first successful blood transfusion. Have you found your answer to the question yet? It's tough. The evidence is mixed, and comparisons don't really help very much. It seems the times are always a-changing. It also seems it all depends on our perspective and our politics. And then, of course, there are the predictions to consider as well. Extreme evangelicals, both of fundamental Christianity and of climate science, persistently prophesy and predict the end of the world. The Green Team, a member of the Green Team, sent me an article this past week entitled, "Are Humans Going Extinct?" Its scientist author writes that it's hard for him to imagine human beings making it into the 2030s as a species. Yeah, so I counted. I'll be in my 70s in the 2030s. I was hoping to hang around that long. My daughters will be in their 40s. I like to hope of the possibility of grandchildren by then. And then there are the Seventh-day Adventists, who make regular predictions about the coming rapture. And although they've been wrong about every prediction so far, they are still the 12th largest religious body in the world with 16.3 million members or more. And just for some scale, we are about 220,000 strong worldwide. A Pew Research poll recently reported that 41% of Americans believe Jesus will return before the year 2050. So, is the end coming? Or will the world be a better place in 100 years? I didn't make the question up. I learned recently, rather, that it's a question Jill Webb, our own Reverend Hammer's wife, uses when she's interviewing potential jurors for her criminal defense cases. She wants jurists who answer a certain way. So I'll give you another few seconds to settle on your own answer. We worked the question in small groups at our social justice training a few weeks ago. The natural pessimists and the natural optimists, the climate change radicals, the house renovators and school reformers, those who clothe and feed the poor, some who work in our prisons, and the women's health advocates, all Souls members and friends, I must mention, talked, debated, and hashed it out in their small groups. And I sat quietly eavesdropping in as I was able, as animated conversations filled the room, feeling a little bit worried because I didn't know where people would land. It's easy to despair. We're fighting the longest wars we ever have. The polar ice caps are melting. They say the next wars will be over clean water. Sometimes I wonder what I would be capable of if I were fighting for clean water to drink for my own children or grandchildren. It's tempting to retreat into righteous anger. The divide between the rich and the poor grows larger every day. The division between political parties grows deeper. The difference between the world we dream of living in and the one we experience and read about looms large in our minds and weighs heavy on our hearts. So as they discussed the current realities, I worried what they would decide. And I thought about what my own answer would be. Do I believe the world will be a better place in 100 years? Hope, as we know, can be hard to find, literally. But I'm in the hope business, so to speak. So I decided to play hide and seek with hope this past week, and decided to review my life, my own life, looking for places hope might be hiding. One thing you should know, hope doesn't exactly come naturally to me, which made the game a little bit more challenging. The fact is, I've inherited the depression gene. There's a clear and direct line you can trace backward in my family of sad and often anxious people on both sides of my family, actually, of the gifts of biology, which means I've known my share of darkness and despair. So it kind of got off to a slow start last week, my game of hide and seek. First, I remembered a story about my dad. Some of you know my dad is still alive, living in Boston with Alzheimer's, so he can't tell me these stories anymore. But he's told me this one a few times, so I think I can do it justice. Back in the day, he was the president of a business, of a factory. The workers in the factory made big machines. The machines made cardboard boxes that folded into all kinds of fancy ways, fancy for the 1960s anyway. The machines were big and dangerous, the kind of machine someone could lose a leg or an arm operating. So insurance became a nightmare for my dad, and the pressure to keep clients in order to pay the insurance premiums and settle liability cases especially intensified over the years. At some point, the company lost a major account. A Swiss giant called Bobst, I remember even though I was a little girl, decided to stop buying their machines from my dad's factory. The day he lost the account, my dad was so depressed, he was so tempted by despair, he thought of killing himself. Alone in his hotel room, feeling humiliated and ashamed, afraid to go home and tell his wife, but especially afraid to tell his father, who had built the company up and passed it on to him. He found himself staring at the window of his hotel room as he paced back and forth and imagined jumping, until my Uncle Al came to his door. Now, you need to know a little bit more about my Uncle Al before I continue. Al was the black sheep of the family, the one who drank too much, womanized too much, gambled too much. Other family members used to say, "That Al, he sure is an alchemist. He can turn money into poop." That night, however, Al made a good bet. He knocked on my dad's door, came right in without waiting, and when he saw the situation, he settled in for the night. That's right, Al slept in the bed with my dad all night. I figure Al, the black sheep, saved my dad's life. And if Al could do it, any one of us can, and might have to someday. So I kept on seeking, looking for hope. And I found a favorite movie I like to watch every December. It's a French movie called Joyeux Noël, or Merry Christmas, about German and British soldiers during World War I. Some of you may know the story. It's worth retelling, I hope you'll agree. World War I, as you know, was a gruesome war. We think 9 million soldiers and 7 million civilians were killed. The dominant style of warfare of men stuck in the trenches, fighting to gain inches of ground over grueling months through all 4 seasons, combined with military technology which made us more effective killers, decimated the young men of that generation and a majority of their families too. And in the course of 4 years, the war also destroyed 4 empires, redrew maps, and redefined nations around the globe. But the soldiers, the men, in these very days leading up to Christmas, exactly 100 years ago, laid down their weapons and made their own peace. They climbed out of their trenches, walked toward each other, and exchanged seasonal greetings. They laid down their weapons. They swapped prisoners and had joint burial ceremonies of their dead. They sang Christmas carols in English and in German. And on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, both sides ventured into no man's land to exchange souvenirs and gifts. They gave each other food and cigarettes, shared their schnapps and scotch with each other. And they played soccer, one of the most powerful images, lasting images of the truce and of our enduring and eternal desire for peace. If soldiers can make peace on the battlefield, I figured I also have to hope for and make peace on the battlefields of my everyday life. And as I played my own personal game of hide and seek, I realized that hope actually hurts in a strange way. To find and feel these seeds of hope I was finding and to plant them in my own mind and in my own heart, I also had to touch the terrible horrors of the war. And I also had to touch the depths of my dad's despair. I had to descend into darkness and then climb back out. Each time that got easier, both to find hope and to climb back out. And once I found 2 or 3 hiding places, the game sped up, got a little faster, and I started to find seeds of hope more and more easily here and there. My own sister, for example, has courageously faced her own severe scoliosis for more than 40 years now. She's argued with doctors, refused surgeries, endured pain, and consistently struggled for her right to move freely in her own body as long as is humanly possible. These days, she's re-emerging from the despair of a 30-year marriage ending, and once again, I'm so impressed by her persistence in the face of pain. She reminds me we are each capable of more than we imagine, and that the worst things are never the last things.
I give to All Souls because I can't help myself. I have never been part of a church that each dollar goes further than anything I've ever seen done before.
I give because at All Souls, we are inclusive of all people.
I give because at All Souls, There is strength in diversity.
Your gift to All Souls makes a difference, and in 2015 it might make all the difference. You've just heard a lot of people say why they give, and I hope to find out why you give. So after you fill out pledge information online or come into the church and fill it out, and I hope you'll do that before Christmas this year so that we know how much we'll have in 2015. I hope you'll come in and maybe tell me why it is that you give so much and why you are helping us to make a difference in this community and in this world. Thank you for everything you do.
We are each capable of more than we imagine, and that the worst things are never the last things. Which made me think of Joseph in the Hebrew Bible. Do you remember Joseph, the one with the very special coat? I'm going to share an abbreviated version of the story with you because it's the third and last place where I found hope in this last week. So Joseph was born into what I would call a tragically dysfunctional family. You can relate, it's okay. His father, Jacob, loved only one woman, Rachel, but she couldn't have children, so he had children with other women. He had 10 sons, in fact, with other women. Then Rachel got pregnant and had a boy, Joseph. Because he was Rachel's son, Jacob treated Joseph differently than his 10 other sons. He spoiled Joseph tremendously. He didn't expect anything of him, and so his brothers, well, you can imagine, they hated Joseph. In fact, they hated him so much, they almost killed him, and instead they sold him into slavery in Egypt. Then they lied to their father and told him that Joseph had been killed. But that's not the end of the story. In Potiphar's household, Joseph, forced to work really for the first time in his life, did really, really well. He was so smart and so successful, in fact, that Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him. Again and again, he resisted her advances, and she grew so angry, she accused him of assaulting her and had Joseph thrown into prison. Are you with me? But that's not the end of the story. In prison, Joseph became known as someone who could interpret dreams. So when the Pharaoh had a dream he didn't understand, a servant told him about the young Hebrew prisoner's gift for interpretation. The Pharaoh came to Joseph, who did indeed interpret his dream, and beautifully so, and the Pharaoh was so impressed, he made Joseph his right-hand man. They set aside stores of grain for the hard times ahead, and when the famine arrived, Egypt became known as the breadbasket of the world. But that's not the end of the story either. When Jacob and his many wives, his sons, their many sons and their many wives, were starving now because of the famine, Jacob sent his sons to beg for food at the Pharaoh's court. When Joseph saw his brothers coming, he wondered, how should I treat them? When the brothers saw it was their brother Joseph at the Pharaoh's side, the brother they'd almost killed and sold into slavery, they wondered too how their brother would treat them. All Joseph said was, "Be not afraid. You meant what you did for evil, but God used it for good." But that's still not the end of the story. The whole family moved to Egypt. The people survived the famine. Then one day Moses delivered them out of Egypt after a whole bunch of plagues, where after they wandered in the desert for a long, long, long time, until they finally settled in the promised land, where, well, the story continues to this day. Ancient and modern prophets and predictions notwithstanding. It's still not the end of the story, not of our story, not of your story. Remember the social justice training I mentioned earlier? Even though I was afraid to hear what they had decided, I had to ask a representative from each group to share their answers with the rest of us. I'm sure you remember the question, do you believe the world will be a better place in 100 years? One by one, they listed their own reasons for despair. They expressed their skepticism at the possibility of enough change coming soon enough to save us. And then each and every group affirmed that yes, in the end, they believe the world will be a better place in 100 years, which means Jill would be able to select them to sit on one of her juries. Because that's what she's learned over the years practicing law in Oklahoma, is that what we believe about the future affects how we treat people here and now. Someone who answers, no, I don't think so because we're damned to hell anyway, or someone who's waiting for the rapture or even hoping it will come soon, doesn't care much about people suffering here and now. Our theology matters. And finding the authentic sources of your own hope matters too. Do you believe the world will be a better place in 100 years? I hope so, because it's what we believe that makes us willing to forgive each other and willing to work to make the world a better place. Some, and even many in Oklahoma, would say, if we can't save the world, then to hell with it, either salvation or damnation. But that's the fatalistic, faulty fantasy, not hope. Now, before you go off to play hide and seek with hope over these last 11 days before Christmas, as you move through your own long, dark nights and make your own Christmas truces, I want to give you a last hint about where and how to look. When I was a very little girl, I loved to play hide and seek, like this. I've learned since then that children 3 to 4 years old think they're hidden if and when there's no eye contact. That's why I thought no one could find me when I hid my eyes. And that's why if you cover your eyes, a 3 or 4-year-old child will still say to you, I can't see you. Even though they can. When asked, they'll admit that they can see your body, but they'll insist that they can't see you, the real you, unless they look into your eyes. Hope is like that. It's right here, but we have to open our eyes and dare to look into each other's eyes to find it and know it's real. You may also want a box. I decided to make my own Pandora's box of hope this week. Remember last week, Pandora couldn't resist opening her wedding gift, and when she did, she released all the evil things in the world, and at the very bottom of the box, she found something waiting: hope. So I invite you to keep track of the stories you find in your own lives. I'd encourage you to try to find one a day from today until Christmas and put them in your own Pandora's box. Keep the lid open. The box was opened up a long, long, long time ago. There are 3 seeds of hope I found playing hide and seek this week. We can and do save each other's lives, each and every day, as my Uncle Al saved my dad's life that night so long ago. The people always want peace, like those soldiers in the trenches of Europe 100 years ago. And we can't see or know the end, but we can and do live through lots of terrible endings, as Joseph did so many moons ago. Remember, hope is not afraid of evil or suffering, because hope isn't a wimpy fantasy of a world without pain or death. She isn't ignorant or innocent. Hope's eyes are wide open. She's as fierce, insistent, and persistent as despair. She flies into the face of evil, and she requires our effort and our will to stay active in the world. Our mandate in this season is to look hard for hope in our own lives, to be midwives of hope. And if it turns out the game feels too hard, because this has been an especially difficult year for you for one reason or another, ask a friend to help you. Pray to find her. Hide and seek is fun to play with a friend, because hope is hiding somewhere, probably nearby. She knows we can't see the future. We know we can't wait for the last judgment because it happens every day. But by looking into each other's eyes, we can live with hope in our hearts. So will the world be a better place in 100 years? I hope so. I'll work to make it so. And I hope you'll join me. Amen.